Hi everybody, I know it's been probably like a while since I've actually shot a video. Um, I had something, I know I've talked about it sort of briefly previously, in a previous video on this channel, but, I wanted to, talk about it today. Today, as I'm shooting this video, today is May 14th, 2013. The reason why I named today's date now at the beginning is because 25 years ago today, on May 14th, 1988, there was a horrible accident south of here, and I live in northern Kentucky, and the accident happened in Carrollton, Kentucky, that took 27 lives, and most of them children. And of course you're probably thinking, well, what happened on May 14th, 1988 is the Carrollton bus accident. I know, like I said before, that I've talked about the Carrollton bus accident on this channel previously, but, I want to talk about some things, like my thoughts on the Carrollton bus accident, and I want to acknowledge the fact that today is the 25th anniversary of it, and the kind of impact it's had on me. And I want to talk about that more or less exclusively. But I've been thinking about that bus accident. Earlier today, if you follow me at all on Facebook, because I have a Ghosties in Kentucky Facebook page. I might have mentioned this previously. Earlier, I inadvertently cut a slight rant about the accident over there on Facebook and posted it on my Ghosties in Kentucky page. Well, one thing I have to say is, can you imagine what it would have been like? Because I was 12 years old when it happened. It's kind of telling my age, but, and you see something like that on television, and it's about people that were about your own age, and they're being burnt up to a crisp, basically. I'm being a little polite about it, but, they actually died of smoke inhalation and something else. You have to, of course, also, at the same token, and I need to mention this, you need to back up and think about this here. This horrible bus accident happened pre-9/11, 2001, and after the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire, which happened in Fort Thomas, or Southgate, whatever you want to call it. And that happened when I was about 24 months old, approximately, and it happened literally like a stone's throw from where I grew up. And I don't, of course, remember the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire. I know I talked about the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire in that other video. But yeah, it was like big news, and like my parents, as an aside about the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire, my parents, and I know I mentioned this in that other video, that my parents told me that they could see the fire from our house. And see, I live back behind the base in Fort Thomas. And yes, there is, I know I've said this several times before, but there is an active base in Fort Thomas. And, it was in the news recently because there's an army platoon based there in Fort Thomas. And they came back home recently from Afghanistan. But, Mom and Dad told me about the smells and sights from the Supper Club fire. But the Carrollton bus accident was the worst drunk driving accident, though, that had ever happened in America or Kentucky history in like a while. It was like, it's tied for the second worst accident in history. There's another accident that I think happened in Floyd County, Kentucky in like the 1950s that killed 27 people. It's the Bus 27 accident. It was like they all drowned in a river or something. I remember reading about that, but there's like another bus accident that happened that took like more lives or something. I forget what that one was, but this bus accident's the second worst. And I know one thing that from that day, 25 years ago, that, when I was 12, I decided to not drink and drive when I became an adult. Because if that's what happened when a person got drunk, then it was an evil thing to do. Of course, you have to remember this is being filtered through the mind of a 12-year-old. Let's put some perspective on that. That's a 12-year-old child thinking. Okay. also, and, I mean, I hate to kind of talk about this person, it's bad to speak ill of the deceased, but, I had a grandfather, who I knew had a drinking problem, like a bad drinking problem, and, it's like I thought about him, because, it's like I knew that Grandpa had been known to drink and drive. And, I've had the misfortune of seeing the man completely drunk once. And I'll talk about that in a later. But, it's like I always thought, it's like I never understood how he never managed to get into a bad car accident and kill somebody. That's like one of the great mysteries of this world that I, honest to God, don't understand, and I don't know how he, something like this never happened to him, but I am grateful for that. I am, and, I mean, he's a very lucky man that never happened to him. And it's just, I thank goodness for that, because, I mean, I can't imagine what Larry Mahoney's family must be feeling, because Larry Mahoney is the drunk driver that was driving the pickup truck that crossed all 4 lanes of I-71 north and south. He was driving north in the southbound lanes of I-71 and hit the bus, hit another car, spun around, and it was like this horrible mess. I mean, and it's like if you look here on YouTube, there's like, photos and stuff of it, and I mean that's just awful. I mean, but back to my grandpa before I go on about the Beverly Hills Cyber Club fire. My grandfather, he would go drink in this one bar in Newport, and it was I remember it was like on the corner of like 12th and something down there in Newport, and it was a blue building. The bar, of course, is now long gone, and I don't know how he got from that bar to where he lived the next town over. I mean, he'd get on Kentucky Route 9, drive past Bobby Mackey's, which I've talked about before. I'm surprised he never drank in Bobby Mackey's. And then he'd drive home. Well, I knew, I'd heard that he had people following him home, and he had alcoholic friends and stuff. I mean, that made sure he got home okay. I'm like, why didn't somebody call his drunk tail a cab? I mean, I know what Grandpa was an alcoholic, but he eventually had to quit drinking because, well, he became legally blind and we made him give up his driving. He didn't get a choice on the quitting drinking part because he couldn't drive and go get himself drunk, and Grandma wouldn't let him out of the house. I mean, he was on a choke chain after that, because I remember Grandma, that was like the one thing that just got up Grandma's car in the worst way. I mean, that was like the thing that they were really fighting over was Grandpa's drinking problem. And, it's like, I actually had the misfortune of when I was like 7 years old, seeing that particular grandfather drunk. He came home and it's just, he was extremely intoxicated, put it that way. And I had never, prior to that night, seen anybody drunk. My mom and dad were like extremely overprotective of me when I was a child, much to their credit. And I like said, Grandpa, are you okay? And he just went crazy on me. And Grandma, I was at their house because Mom and Dad left me there with Grandma because Mom and Dad needed to go do, I don't even remember now what. But, they didn't want to leave me alone because, they couldn't find anybody else to watch me. I think they went to see an adult movie or something, like a rated R movie, not like a porn flick, don't think that. But, he come home drunk. I mean, it was just bad. I remember bursting into tears, crying. And Grandma just went off on him. And I don't remember what happened, really, other than, like, he went in his room and stayed there or something. And it took Grandma a really long time to, convince me that everything was okay. I did forgive Grandpa for it, but, after that, I just was kind of, I shied away from him a lot. And, I just, you know, the drunk incident with my grandfather happened before this. Of course, like I said, I was 7 when he came home drunk, and the bus accident happened, 5 years later, and I just, it really, I mean, like, it drove that home that, drinking and driving is bad. I mean, it did. It just beat that into my head that it was, seeing, how it affected one person, being my grandfather, is like, like it could make them act completely nuts, and, and being bad and irresponsible and driving. I mean, it just, I mean, the Carrollton bus accident, and this is, of course, like my frame of reference at the time, that I'm like, I'm not drinking and driving when I grew up. I mean, and I mean, this is, what the Carrollton bus accident was for me, was it made me realize, that, when you get behind the wheel of a car, you are taking not only your own life in your hands, but anybody and everybody that goes past you, like heading in the same direction or going in the opposite direction. And drinking, and, I understood drinking to have impaired who you are as a person. Like, my grandfather, when he was sober, and it's like, for the 99.999% of my life, my grandfather was sober as a minister on Sunday, and he did not have a mean bone in his body, except when he was drunk. And, it just, it makes you make bad judgment. And that's one thing that I've learned is, getting drunk makes you have bad judgment. And, and I realized that very early on at the age of 12. And, for a 12-year-old kid to make that kind of an adult decision, I mean, that's, I gotta say, that's a very, very mature decision. I remember my mom telling me that that's like, for a 12-year-old kid to look at its parents and say, after this kind of horrific accident, I will not drink and drive when I become an adult, that's pretty profound. And, I just, like I said, I did kind of cut a rant about, adults being irresponsible. Larry Mahoney should have been, granted, he was drunk, and the man had, I mean, this is like a matter of public record. It's like Pinhead. It's a matter of public record. The man had 7 or 8 DUIs prior to this bus accident. I don't understand, and this is the thing that I don't understand. I don't understand why they didn't just revoke his license once and for all and for good, and just say, you can't drive, you're constantly getting DUIs. I mean, this guy, somebody down there in that area in government should have red flagged his stuff and said, prior to this bus accident, why is this guy continuing to being allowed to drive? He needs to lose his license permanently because he keeps getting DUI, 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 DUI. I mean, there's an obvious issue here this guy is having. And we need to stop him before it causes a problem. I mean, sometimes, and this bus accident is proof of this, sometimes it just takes something major to happen to get people to go, oh my God, that, this person should have been stopped a while ago. Thanks to the, and Larry Mahoney was the drunken idiot that was driving the truck that caused the accident. And Larry Mahoney only went to jail for 10 of his 17-year sentence. And I'm like thinking, really? Even back then, I thought he should have went to jail for longer. I do. I think he should have went to jail for the rest of his life. I mean, he, at the time, was a little younger than what I am now. He's 35. He was 35 at the time of the accident. So, he's, almost 60. He's like 50-something years old, 59, I think, if I had it right, but no matter. And as I said, on Facebook. I think, you know, it is my opinion that Larry Mahoney should have been charged with several counts of vehicular homicide, reckless endangerment, drunk driving, child abuse, and wanton endangerment. You know, and I mean, I would have thrown the book at him. I mean, and I would have been creative with the charges because, you know, I mean, he should have had something worse than just a slap on the wrist DUI. I mean, because, they should have looked at the fact that, okay, this man has had how many DUIs? And what have you done about this? I mean, really. I mean, all they did was say, okay, well, he's going to get 17, they convicted him. And they said, okay, well, where this is mainly a DUI thing, he's only going to get 17 years. And they let him out 7 years early. Really? I mean, I think he should have gotten charged with 27 counts of vehicular homicide, 24 counts of child abuse, and, wanton endangerment, 27 counts of wanton endangerment or something. I mean, of course, I'm not a lawyer, but that's what I would have charged him with, and that's, how I feel about it. My opinion is, Larry Mahoney is lucky I was only 12 years old at the time, or if I'd been an adult and the prosecuting attorney down there in that area, I would have, he would have been finding himself being prosecuted for a whole truckload, pun intended, of that stuff, and then some, because the man had gotten, like I said, 7 or 8 DUIs prior to him being involved with the second worst bus accident in American history. And my question is now for the adults that were running the court system, the judicial system in that area, is why didn't you take away his driver's license from him permanently before the bus accident that he caused 25 years ago today? Why didn't you do that? And what was wrong with you? What was the problem? Was the left hand not knowing what the right hand was doing? Why? I mean, I want to know why somebody didn't red flag this guy, and, why somebody didn't stop him before this. I mean, this is what I don't understand. Why was he not stopped beforehand? That's what I want to know. Of course, one thing I know for sure today, thanks to Larry being a dumbass idiot and getting himself oiled and causing this accident, I know from that day to this that the DUI laws here in Kentucky and a few other states for that matter, because I remember it being in the news afterwards, they are a whole lot more stricter than what they were back in May of 1988 when Larry wrecked his truck into that bus and killed all of those innocent souls that were coming home from Kings Island up here in Mason, Ohio, that evening. Larry is lucky that, the laws were what they were here in Kentucky and were as lax as they were back in 1988, or he'd be really, he would be really catching hell for it now. I know somebody, and just for the record, no, it's not me. I'm not that irresponsible here, and I have lived up to my promise to not drink and drive, and I'm going to continue to do so, just for the record. I know somebody that recently got a DUI, and this is a guy who I worked with at a previous job, and he was training to be a priest, and since, has not become a priest, he's not a priest now. He's married to somebody, and, they got kids and whatever, and, he lives out in Hebron, or out in Indiana, past the airport. But this guy, the would-have-been priest, told me that the one thing after he got his DUI here in Kentucky, which was, I think it was, like, what, in 2011 maybe? He said that it just after everything that, happened, and they made him watch, like, a video on the Carrollton bus accident and everything, he said that he would never, ever, as long as he lived, ever do that kind of stuff ever again, ever. And I told him, I said, I think that's, great, because, because my opinion is, after, being 12 years old and seeing the Carrollton bus accident, it made me decide to never drink and drive too. So, I think, he's doing the right thing in my book about not drinking and driving ever again. Well, one thing, and I did want to say this in closing, that, this happened, of course, 25 years ago before 9/11/2001. There was a May 15th, 1988, and one bad decision made by a man named Larry Mahoney to get himself drunk. And I don't know, and the other thing is, and before I, completely stop talking for the evening, the other thing is I don't understand why the bartenders down there didn't cut him off and say, okay, Larry, you've had one too many. You need to stop drinking. And they should have taken his keys from him. They should have called his butt a cab. I don't know why, the adults there did not protect Larry from himself. I think, and this is another thing, I think that there should be, I think bars, and I've said this before to somebody, at bars now, I've actually seen a few signs, I've gone in some place that, serves alcohol and it says, we reserve I think it was the Hoffer House down in Newport, has a sign posted that says, our bartenders will not serve you if you appear too intoxicated. They actually have signs posted saying that, and I think that's responsible, because I think what should have happened is several things other than, the DMV, the DMV should have stopped Larry from getting another license. And I also think that, after his last DUI before this accident, I think that there should have been something there where it just it went over to the DMV and it said, everywhere, made it federal where he couldn't go, say, to Texas or Tennessee or Maine or Florida or Hawaii or wherever and get a driver's license, because, he's got, there should have been something put in, in the system, in, a national database or something that says this person has gotten X number of DUIs and, is not allowed to have a license in Kentucky for that reason. Of course, now, afterwards, and part of his punishment is Larry can no longer have a driver's license. I remember this being in the news, they talked about it. He can no longer drive. Can't even own a vehicle. And, Larry has said that every day since he sobered up and found out what happened, every day he thinks about that several times a day, and he has nightmares about it. And he, thinks about it all the time about what he did to those people, and he's sorry. That's, granted the 10 out of 17 years, is, like I said, basically a slap on the wrist, but, the ultimate worst punishment for him is Larry Mahoney has to live with that every day for the rest of his life, as does the survivors of the crash and the families of the deceased. And I know one thing, it changed my life because it made me more responsible, I feel, because of, I'm well, I don't want to drink and drive, and it's like I said, I've lived up to it. It's just, if I ever have kids, and, I will drive them past there, because I'll tell you what, and I said this on Facebook in that post, every year, all 4 years of my high school career, with my high school, I was in a club, and every year we'd go to state. Well, there's only one way for me to get from here where I live to Louisville, and that's to drive down that stretch of 71. There are actually signs where that bus accident happened, and it says, fatal bus accident. I forget exactly what the sign says, but it says May 14th, 1988. You know, every time I would drive past those signs, because it's on both sides of the interstate, you know, site of fatal bus accident, you know, I would consciously remember that. And, you know, it's like I would, you know, I mean, because I remember seeing, you know, the thing, because it was all 4 lanes, the median was scorched, the road on both sides was scorched. I mean, it was an unbelievable mess. And I mean, it's just, you know, it just bothered me a great deal. I mean, to, you know, actually, you know, see that. I mean, for a 12-year-old kid, you know, you have to think that, you know, kind of stuff would scare the snot out of somebody. It did. I mean, it had an effect, you know, on me now, to where it's like I think about it 25 years ago. And I mean, I feel sorry for the ones that have lost their loved ones, or, you know, the people that had to spend days and weeks and months and years, you know, recovering. I mean, I actually met one of the survivors who made a movie, and it's like I knew it was him because he was on 2020 at I think the 25 years ago at the 20 year, and I told him, and it was earlier than that. It was at like the 15, and I told him, I said, it changed my life too, because I always thought, you know, that could have been me on that bus. You know, and I mean, you know, because like I said, I was the same age as some of those kids that died on the bus. There was like 12-year-olds. I think there was a 12-year-old that died. There was a 10-year-old that died on the bus. You know, but I mean, it just, like I said, made me into a more responsible adult. And, you know, I just want to say, you know, that my opinion is do not drink and drive. You know, if you're an adult, you owe it to yourself and to others to not drink and drive. I mean, you know, I'm not going to say that, you know, like, you know, oh, you're going to go out and have a bus accident. Don't interpret it as that. But what I'm saying is, you know, this kind of wanton irresponsibility of not only Larry Mahoney, but, you know, the bartenders that waited on him that didn't cut him off and take his keys and call him a cab and take the initiative to be responsible for him are responsible too. I mean, because I think now, and I wouldn't swear this, but, you know, I think now it's like they've started cracking down on bars because of that, to where it's like they can be held liable for drunk accidents, just because, you know, that this, you know, has been, you know, Larry Mahoney's a prime example of, you know, bartenders not taking the initiative and cutting people off when they should have stopped like 10, 15 drinks ago or whatever. I mean, it's just, you know, like I won't let even Tony drive. Tony and I have an agreement that neither one of us will drink or drive. We'll either drink and not drive or drive and not drink. I mean, we take that responsibility seriously. I don't drink anyway. I mean, like, I might have, like, if I was going to drink at all, I might have, like, one drink and then stop. And then, like, I will wait, like, 4 or 5 hours before I leave, just to make sure it's out of my system. And then I will drink water or soda or something until, you know, I feel like, you know, I'm sober. But, you know, anyway, I just wanted to, you know, stop and acknowledge that bus accident and how much it, you know, all these years later, that, you know, it makes me think that, you know, one, I'm grateful that I'm still living, and two, you know, don't drink and drive. And that's my main message, you know, tonight, is don't drink and drive, and at least take the responsibility to tell your loved ones that you love them, and, you know, that you're glad to have them in your life. Alright? Well, I want to thank you for watching, and I'm sorry I kind of went on long, but it's just one of those things that I just wanted to, you know, say. Alright? Well, you all have a good evening. Bye.